Hello everyone, I'm Eli Andy, a GRE instructor here at the International Scholars Program. Welcome to our GRE series. Today we'll be looking at different strategies for tackling sentence equivalence questions. Now, as you know, in the GRE, sentence equivalence questions are sentences with blanks that you have to fill with 2 answers picked from 6 answer choices. So we'll start right away. So one of the first things to do when you want to tackle a sentence equivalent question is to read the entire sentence to get its meaning and tone. So don't read up to the blank and stop there and start figuring out the answer you need to pick, but read the entire sentence. That is the only way you'll get to understand the meaning of the sentence, and the meaning will guide you in picking the right answer. Then try to spot the clue for that question. The way the ETS sets up its sentence equivalence questions is they put some clues, they drop some clues or hints in the sentence. So for example, a clue may be an elaboration on what the right answer should be, or a clue may be defining something, or it may be giving the opposite of what you need to pick. So your task is to identify what the clue is so that it can help you get the right answer. Then, of course, you also need to figure out the connection between the blank and the clue or the hint you have spotted. So for example, will the blank be the opposite of the clue? Is the clue elaborating on the blank, for example? So figure out that connection. Then in some cases, you can have better luck by trying to think of a word or a couple of words or a phrase that you can use to fill the blank even before looking at the answer choices. If that is possible for a specific question, it will make your work easier. Then for most of these questions, the elimination method works well based on the understanding you have of the sentence and the clue and the hint and the connection between the blank and the clue. You can eliminate the answer choices that don't seem to fit the blank so that you remain with the right answer. Then another method is to try and pair up the words, because as you know, as we said earlier, the sentence equivalence questions comes with 6 choices, but you need to pick 2 answers. So the answers, the right answers, that is the pair of them, should give the sentence the same logical meaning. So for example, if you have the choices A, B, C, D, E, and F, you can put them in pairs depending on their meaning. So for example, if A has the same meaning as C, you can put them together. Then maybe B and D don't have their counterparts, and then maybe you have E and F. So from here, you can automatically rule out B and D, and then your last task is to figure out between A and C and E and F, which will give the sentence the most correct meaning. So that is just the basic approach you should give the sentence equivalence questions. So we'll be looking at a few examples to see how we can put these strategies in practice. So our first example is here. Early critics of Emily's poetry mistook for simple-mindedness the surface of artlessness that in fact she constructed with such dash. Early critics of Emily's poetry mistook for simple-mindedness the surface of artlessness that in fact she constructed with such blank. So we have our choices from A to F, and we need to pick a pair that will give this sentence a logical and correct meaning. Now, so the first thing is to figure out what this sentence is talking about and look for the clue. Now, looking at this sentence equivalence question, it's not such a complicated one, and you can see that the main idea is the mistake the critics took when looking at Emily's poetry. So according to the critics, Emily's poetry was simple-minded. Simple-minded meaning the critics thought that Emily's work was unsophisticated. But looking at the wording of this sentence, and especially this word here, mistook, the idea is that the critics were wrong. And in fact, Emily's poetry was not unsophisticated. It was actually the opposite. So that is what we should be looking at here, because if they mistook the poetry for simple-mindedness, then it follows, it makes sense that the poetry was not actually the work of a simple-minded process. So Emily constructed the poetry with such maybe sophistication. So looking at the answer choices, we should be looking at something that mirrors the idea of the fact that Emily's work was sophisticated. So with that, looking at choice A, that is astonishment, won't make sense because it's not giving us the same idea. Then we are also looking at craft. This one is not so far off the mark, so we can keep it for now. Then the other one is cunning. Looks good also, we can leave it. Innocence, not the same meaning as sophistication. Naivety, not really. In fact, it's almost opposite. Vexation, that means annoyance, won't fit here. Naivety, by the way, just means lacking experience or wisdom. So with that, we have our answers as craft and cunning. So early critics of Emily's poetry mistook for simple-mindedness the surface of artlessness that in fact she constructed with such craft, or she constructed with such cunning. Another one. The macromolecule RNA is common to all living beings, and DNA, which is found in all organisms except some bacteria, is almost as. So again, we are seeing two things here being compared, and the comparison is in the same direction. That is, it's balanced because we have this last phrase here is almost as. So we are expecting some similarity. And so our next task is to figure out what should be the similarity, what should be similar between this RNA and the DNA. So again, looking at the sentence, we see that the micromolecule RNA is common to all living beings. So it's abundant, it's present in all living beings. What about the DNA? The DNA is found in all organisms except some bacteria. So there's a common thing we are seeing here. There's a similarity. RNA is common to all living things. DNA is also found in all organisms, except of course the bacteria. So we can say that the DNA is almost as common as the RNA. So you can see how figuring out the meaning of the sentence will help you arrive at the right answer. So let's look at the answer choices and see which of them will give us the same meaning. So comprehensive won't fit. We have fundamental, not giving us the same idea. Inclusive, not really. Universal, this one looks good because we can say that RNA is universal to all living beings. DNA is almost the same. So it's almost as common. So we leave that for now. Then significant, this one is out of contention. Then ubiquitous is another one. So we have universal and ubiquitous. So you can see, again, looking at the meaning of the sentence and the clue helps us to arrive at the right answer. And the ubiquitous makes sense here because it means something that is present everywhere. So our sentence can read, the macromolecule RNA is common to all living beings, and the DNA, which is found in all organisms except some bacteria, is almost as universal or is almost as ubiquitous.
You are watching Success with Bob Mwiti Show, presented to you by the Kenya Airlift Program. The Kenya Airlift Program is an award-winning education financing scheme that helps bright Kenyan students to pursue graduate studies in North America regardless of their financial background. You can find our programs by going to www.kenyaairliftprogram.com. The Kenya Airlift Program, empowering dreams.
Another example. So we have this one, a relatively long sentence. While in many ways their personalities could not have been more different, she was ebullient, where he was glum, relaxed, where he was awkward, garrulous, where he was dash. They were surprisingly well suited. So here we have a comparison of two people. We have a comparison, and the idea is that they were different in many ways. We have that meaning here. Their personalities could not have been more different. So we have two people being compared, and they are very different. And we are given contrast in their personalities. We are given contrast in their personalities. So she was ebullient. He was glum. So that is the first comparison. She was ebullient and he was glum. Then we also have she was relaxed, but he was awkward. So the blank is also another comparison, a contrast in fact. She is garrulous, whereas he was. So this is what we should be looking at. So we should be looking at something that contrasts with garrulous. So that is the clue. There is a contrast of their personalities. So, and the last personality listed here is that she was garrulous. So we need to find something that has maybe an opposite meaning to garrulous. So looking at the answer choices, maybe we should have a rough idea of this, of the meaning of the answer choices. So for example, solicitous means attentive or concerned. Then we have magnificent, that means generous. Then we have irresolute, that means uncertain or hesitant. Then we have laconic, using few words. Then we have fastidious, that means attentive. Then we also have taciturn, that means reserved. So now, to figure out what our answer should be, we also need to know the meaning of garrulous, a personality that is contrasted with his personality that should be in the blank. So garrulous means excessively talkative. So it seems she was excessively talkative. So because their personalities are opposing each other, we need to pick two answer choices that mean he was not excessively talkative. And looking at the answer choices, we can immediately see what they should be: laconic and taciturn. So as you can see, once again, looking at the meaning of the sentence and spotting the clue is a great way to tackle sentence equivalence questions. Like in this case, the clue is that in many ways, their personalities could not have been more different. And we even have examples of their contrasting personalities. So that was a great clue there. Let's look at another example. Even in this business, where das is part of everyday life, a talent for lying is not something usually found on one's resume. Even in this business, where das is part of everyday life, a talent for lying is not something usually found on one's resume. So again, let's see what this sentence is saying. Even in this business, where something is part of everyday life. So up to there, if you stop there, again, this is why we said you don't read up to the blank and start filling it. Because if you stop at the first comma, you really don't get the meaning of the sentence. So the second part of this sentence, that is, a talent for lying is not something usually found on one's resume, gives us further clue that we can use to decipher this sentence and plug in the blank. So what is this sentence basically saying? Something here is part of everyday life. So something is part of everyday life. So what is this thing? Look at this first, the last part. A talent for lying is not something usually found in one's resume. This is basically a definition of what the blank should be. This is the clue. So this talent for lying is part of everyday life, but people don't include it in their resumes. So that is the logical meaning of this sentence. That is basically people lie a lot in everyday life, but when it comes to their resumes, they don't put their lies. So we should be looking at a pair of answers that will give us the idea of lying. Okay, so a talent for lying. So let's look at this: aspiration, mendacity, that means lying, so we can leave that for now. Prevarication also has the same connotation, because it means to avoid the truth, avoid telling the truth, or to act, speak evasively. Insensitivity, want to make any logical sense with the sentence. Baseness also want to make sense, and avarice want to make sense because it means extreme greed for wealth. So the sentence is basically saying, even in this business where lying is part of everyday life, and the answer choices that would give us that meaning are mendacity and prevarication. So we can read, even in this business where mendacity is part of everyday life, a talent for lying is not something usually found in one's resume. Or you can read, even in this business where prevarication is part of everyday life, a talent for lying is not something usually found on one's resume. So we get the same meaning of the sentence when we use B or C. So let's look at the last example for today. The vegetation at Stone Mountain, the best known of the large rock masses known as monadnocks, is far from dash, having been decimated by the hiking traffic. Okay, so again, let's break down or decipher this sentence to understand its meaning. So we have some vegetation here that has been decimated. This is the main thing you should get from this sentence. So the bit between these commas is just elaborating on the vegetation. That is, the best known of the large rock masses known as modern rocks. It's just elaborating or helping to identify the vegetation that the sentence is talking about. But the main idea is that the vegetation at Stone Mountain has been decimated, that is destroyed or spoiled by hiking traffic. So hikers have really affected the vegetation at Stone Mountain. So with that, what can we say about this vegetation? It is far from something. It is far from something. So if it has been decimated or it has been spoiled or destroyed, then it is far from being whole or intact. Yes, it is not intact or whole. So it has been destroyed in a way. It's far from being intact. So again, let's look at the answer choices to see what we have. So blighted means ruined. We can't say the vegetation is far from ruined because actually it has been ruined. It has been decimated. So blighted is out. Endangered, not really. Picturesque, yes, it's far from picturesque because this one means scenic or attractive. So it's far from that because it has been decimated. Then pristine, yes, we have another one. Pristine means unspoiled. So this vegetation, because it has been decimated, it is far from unspoiled. Is it far from undisturbed? Not really, because it's actually been disturbed. Vulnerable? No. So we have our answers as C and D. So you can see with sentence equivalence questions, as you can see from the strategies we discussed in the beginning and from the examples we have tackled, first get the meaning of the sentence. Then spot the clue. Then finally, you can eliminate wrong answers. So with that, we come to the end of our session for today. I hope you've learned something that you can build on when practicing your sentence equivalence strategies. Bye, and welcome back next time.